Before the story begins, I'd like to ask you to subscribe and like. This will help the channel grow. The Silent Witness, a detective mystery in Hollow Creek. Detective Evelyn Cross had worked her fair share of missing persons cases, but something about Hollow Creek always unsettled her. The small town was too quiet, too watchful, as though the shadows of its streets knew more than the people who lived there. It was just after midnight when the call came. A neighbor had reported strange noises at the old Harper residence on Willow Street. When Evelyn arrived, the house stood dark, its windows blank like staring eyes. The front door was ajar, swaying faintly in the cool wind. Inside, silence, no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture. Only a faint, metallic smell clinging to the air. On the dining room table, she found a single object, an antique camera, its lens cracked, and inside, an undeveloped roll of film. Next to it, a note typed on a typewriter. She saw what she should not have. The missing woman was Margaret Harper, a local historian known for digging too deeply into Hollow Creek's past. Evelyn took in the scene, her eyes narrowing at the detail. Whoever left this note wanted her to think Margaret was gone because of something she uncovered. As she scanned the room, the silence of the house seemed to grow heavier, almost suffocating. The creak of the floorboards beneath her boots echoed like whispers. Evelyn realized she wasn't just investigating a disappearance. She was stepping into a story someone else had already written. The roll of film from the Harper house was Evelyn's first real lead. She took it to a trusted technician in town who still worked with old darkroom equipment. Hours later, the images began to surface, blurred, grainy, unsettling. The first few showed Margaret standing near Hollow Creek's abandoned textile mill, her posture uneasy. In the background of one photograph, a figure appeared, tall, indistinct, watching from the shadows. The next images were worse. Empty streets at night, Margaret's car parked by the river, and finally, a shot of Margaret herself, terrified, as though someone else had taken the camera from her hands. Evelyn felt a chill as she examined the prints. These weren't casual photographs. They were warnings. Someone had followed Margaret, documented her movements, and left the evidence deliberately. But why leave the film instead of destroying it? It was almost as if the stalker wanted Evelyn to find it. Back at the precinct, she pinned the photos to the evidence board, their ghostly images staring back at her. The textile mill stood out. It had been closed for decades, shuttered after a fire claimed several lives. Town rumors whispered about corruption, missing workers, and cover-ups. Margaret had been writing about it in her latest article. Evelyn felt her heartbeat quicken. This wasn't just about one missing woman. It was about history that Hollow Creek had buried, and someone willing to kill to keep it that way. The textile mill loomed on the edge of town, its blackened windows, like hollow sockets, staring into the past. Evelyn parked her car and approached carefully, the crunch of gravel loud in the heavy silence. The structure smelled of ash and rot, a reminder of the fire that had ended its life decades ago. Inside, dust hung in the air like a second skin. She moved her flashlight slowly across the walls, revealing old machinery, rusted and twisted, frozen mid-motion. Then she saw it, fresh footprints in the dust. Too recent to be ignored. Following them, Evelyn reached a small office at the far end of the mill. On the desk, another typewritten note awaited her. "The mill keeps its secrets." She heard them. Her flashlight beam caught something else. A stack of old personnel files, half burned but still legible. Names of workers who had never been accounted for after the fire. Among them, Evelyn recognized Margaret Harper's great-uncle. A historian digging into her own family's past. That explained Margaret's obsession, but it also explained why someone might want her silenced. A sudden sound broke the silence. Footsteps, faint but deliberate, moving deeper into the mill. Evelyn drew her weapon, heart pounding, and followed. She turned a corner, and caught the faintest glimpse of movement, a shadow slipping out of sight. Whoever it was, they knew she was here. Later that night, Evelyn reviewed the file she had recovered. Names, dates, payroll records. Too many gaps, too many people who had simply disappeared after the fire. The mill hadn't just burned, it had swallowed lives. At the center of the files was a name circled in red ink: William Crow, the mill's supervisor. His descendants still lived in Hollow Creek, running local businesses, wealthy and untouchable. If Margaret had discovered evidence linking the Crow family to the disappearances, it would explain why she became a target. But Evelyn wasn't prepared for the next discovery. Tucked inside one file was a faded photograph. It showed a group of mill workers posing outside the factory. Standing off to the side, almost hidden, was a young woman who looked exactly like Margaret Harper. Impossible. The photo was dated 1932. Evelyn rubbed her eyes, convinced it was coincidence, a family resemblance. Yet the unease in her stomach told her it was more than that. The town's past wasn't just repeating itself, it was bleeding into the present. Then came the call. A distorted voice on the other end of the line whispered, "Stop digging, detective." The witness must stay silent. The line went dead before she could trace it. Determined to press on, Evelyn returned to the Harper house. Something about it had gnawed at her since the first night, the metallic smell of the silence. Searching more carefully, she discovered a hidden door behind a bookcase, leading down to a stone basement. The air was damp and cold, filled with the musk of mold and old paper. Wooden shelves lined the walls, stacked with Margaret's research, boxes of files, maps, handwritten notes. She had been gathering evidence for months, maybe years, about the mill, the Crow family, and the missing workers. At the center of the room sat another typewriter, its ribbon fresh with ink. On the platen, a new message waited. "You are too late. She has already joined them." But it wasn't just the note. On the floor lay Margaret's necklace, broken, a smear of blood darkening the concrete. Evelyn's chest tightened. Someone had brought her here, left the typewriter active, and departed only recently. The basement walls seemed to press closer, as if listening. In that suffocating silence, Evelyn felt she wasn't alone. And then, faintly, from somewhere beyond the stone walls, came the sound of typing, steady, mechanical, as though another typewriter was waiting, deeper underground. The town woke to chaos. Flames devoured the old textile mill, smoke curling high into the gray sky. Evelyn rushed to the scene, sirens wailing, townsfolk gathering in fear. Someone had set the mill ablaze, determined to wipe away what remained of its secrets. Through the smoke, Evelyn spotted movement, shadowy figures at the edge of the fire, standing still watching. She moved toward them, but they melted into the crowd before she could reach them. Firefighters battled the inferno, but when it was over, little remained. Amid the rubble, Evelyn found something impossible, a charred box that somehow survived intact. Inside were dozens of photographs, all of Margaret. Some taken weeks ago, some that should have been decades old. The last photo chilled Evelyn to the bone. It showed Margaret standing among the mill workers in 1932, smiling faintly, as if she belonged there. On the back, in fresh typewritten ink, were the words, "History does not lose its witnesses. It keeps them." Evelyn stared into the rising smoke. The town gathered in uneasy silence behind her. Margaret wasn't just missing. She had become part of Hollow Creek's story, a story still being written, and Evelyn knew she was now one of its characters.